Warcraft is still toothless. People are speaking out. These are children's stories. So if I had to guess here, I'd say this is probably about recent lore stories and everything else. Now, is Warcraft back to its glory days yet? Well, we thought with the return of Chris Metzen that maybe we'd get some tough guy shit. Big sweaty boys chopping off heads, swords and shields and all. And have we gotten that? Well, yes and no, not really. We've been getting a lot of earthen stories. You know, we're hugging our dwarfs and we're having a good time with that. No real, deaths. No real big boy moments. Nothing too much going on. And we saw Khadgar come back and get rezzed. Let's see what Beliar say about WoW's story.
When Metzen returned on stage triumphant, it was the dawn of a new era for World of Warcraft. He is the man who can do an orcish growl that actually...
so good that it made you pre-cum a little bit,
Jesus Christ. My God. Okay, I should have muted TTS before I started this. Well, that happened, whatever.
He feels like one, and for many of us, that growl heralded a return, at least in part, to war. It's called World of Warcraft after all. Finally, World of Peacecraft was coming to an end.
God.
Because, man, it really was getting old by that point. Now, though, we're almost at the end of the next expansion, and the story that they just added to the PTR has kicked off absolute chaos. At least, if you're on World of Warcraft Twitter, which is a funny place. But really, many people who played it have came out furious, almost feeling betrayed even.
Really?
Pretty much saying this is not the war we were promised. So we decided to hop on PTR and take a look at the new story.
This is not the war we were promised. What war were we promised? Were we promised any war whatsoever? The factions are going to go at it again, I guess, at some point, in a way. You can't have factions all out warring at this point because we're too integrated with each other, but that's kind of a war. Have we ever really gotten the full-blown war that we wanted? BFA was a complete, shadow. Oh, we're going to bait you. No, we're not going to give you a war. Actually, we're going old gods. So, I don't know. I guess there hasn't been the violence that we wanted.
And it's a little bit more complicated than the initial anger would suggest. The Red Dawn gets close to accidentally being a mockery of everything that it's trying to be. Farron, our new poster girl, wastes yet another opportunity to be an interesting character, and again, the Alliance and the Horde have absolutely zero edge to them. Now, this story does have teeth. It actually does some great world building, but Blizzard are, I think, still too afraid of letting those teeth do any...
Oh, man, he stopped the execution. Come on, man. Come on. We need some public executions in this game. That's going to really get the grit going.
Actual biting. Blizzard, you gotta let the teeth connect with some flesh.
I haven't seen these.
Feel it. Basically,
try not to spoil
they're still
myself.
Too afraid of making us feel uncomfortable. And that sounds like strong criticism, so I'm going to back it up, but there's a more pressing problem first. I've got big news for the thousands of you who have joined me on today's sponsor, boot.dev.
There it is.
And that news is TypeScript. The entire back-end learning path is now playable in TypeScript as well as Go. That's kind of huge. And it's funny, Lane's tweet is basically, fine, you win, we've capitulated to the ways of soy because enums. If you're wondering what an enum is and why you should want one, well, this is a good way to find out. And as for why you should care, well, TypeScript is Microsoft's, to put it simply, super-powered version of JavaScript. Static types, fearless refactors, editor autocompletion, a lot of things that make companies like Google, Slack, and Airbnb trust it in production. It's a really powerful skill. To put a long technical story short, it lets you catch bugs while you're coding instead of whenever the server blows up and kills everyone. So, what boot.dev does is it wraps all that good stuff
is coding still going to be a thing, or is AI just going to take this all over? I don't know.
RPG.
We're all going to be
Quests,
unemployed
XP,
soon.
Boss fights, real-time leaderboards,
That's
and
right,
community.
just watching Twitch
you
all
get to
day.
enjoy all of that while you're wiring up databases, building REST APIs, deploying all your stuff to the cloud, and now being able to do that with TypeScript. And by the time you finish the path, you'll have a portfolio that is full of back-end projects, and you'll have the confidence to go in and dual-wield TypeScript and Go on any gig. That's going to look awesome to an employer. And here's the best way to save money. Go to boot.dev/Bellular. Use code Bellular for 25% off. And because 25% of a bigger number is a bigger number, if you do that with the yearly plan, you'll get the biggest saving. And don't worry, because if you don't gel with it, there's a zero-risk 30-day money-back guarantee.
Nice.
More important than anything that literally happens, where this goes wrong is in its tone. In the very intro, Trollbane says that the Sons of Lothar promote tolerance and mercy. Not to...
Do they? Do they? The Sons of Lothar promote tolerance and mercy. I'm pretty sure the Arathi have had some sketchy ass paths when it comes to killing their enemies and executions and trolls and things. Didn't they just fucking destroy a bunch of trolls early on? Oh, I don't know.
Very crazy thing to just say out of left field. And that's what starts off this grand adventure with, you know, the tone of a school teacher trying too hard, or of some bureaucrat talking about government policy. You know, as if the Sons of Lothar are a charity organization and not the name of one of the greatest military forces in Azeroth's history.
Right.
Who, you know, kind of killed a lot of orcs. Now, he says this in...
I was going to say, yeah, orcs too. I mean, there were like literal beheadings of orcs early on. So
response to
I guess you
Faerun
could tolerate
Lothar.
beheadings.
She sees Thoradein's wall, and to her it's a symbol of King Thoradane, a legendary figure in the lore of her people, and the man who united the human tribes through diplomacy and, of course, a bit of violence. But actually not just humans. He also forged a pact with the Elves of Calthalas to win the Troll Wars, and that pact, which helped them win said war, is actually why Faerun's group of Wrathi are half-elves. So she sees this, and she's obviously in awe of this great symbol of her ancestors, yet... well, Trollbane immediately decries it. He says the wall means nothing, that the legend is in fact used to support Stromic superiority. By itself, that could feel a bit ludicrous, but it's...
oh, God. So he's going to shun the history, because we don't learn from history anymore. He's going to shun the history and say, actually, this empire was a piece of shit, because they didn't agree with how, you know, we do things today. It's kind of sad when you apply yesterday's or today's logic to... you know, previous historic empires, right? It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. You're always going to look back and say, well, those guys were barbarians. Guess what they're going to do like fucking 100 years from now when we're all wiped off this planet? They're going to look back at civilization today and be like, my God, those people were barbaric. Yeah, and that's what's happening. Why are you spoiling the story? I don't think we're getting a full spoiler of the story, but we are getting a little bit of inklings of how the story is going to go, and I don't know if this is that great.
It's not some standalone story. What it actually is a sequel to Heartlands, which is an audio drama. Now, in that drama, Danath's niece, Marin, pretty much loses the plot. She, skins a wolf right in front of Jaina in a reference to the legend of Thoradane, and then she leads the Strom army to certain defeat against a much, much larger force of Mag'har orcs. And the whole thing ends with Gaeran Thrall stopping the whole cycle of violence, leaving the Alliance and the Horde forces free to go and fight in Khazalgar. It's basically what happened off screen when those two characters teleported away after we hit max level in the War Within.
This is another problem with WoW lore, the off-screen shit. I don't know why there's so much lore happening in books and all kind, and no inklings of what the fuck was going on previous in the game. They just assume that we actually all bought the book and fucking read it. I wonder what the percentages of actual people who buy these books and read them. I would say probably 5%. 10% of the player base actually reads the books, and then everyone else is kind of either consuming it through YouTube or just getting what's in the game, and that seems like unfinished compared to what you're getting in the books.
Because of all of that,
they need to tell these stories in the game.
Trollbane still feels the sting of Marin's betrayal. Now,
at least
that does
a
make
little
sense.
bit.
It contextualizes why he says what he says about the big wall. But the thing is, that only makes sense if you've listened to Heartlands. And even with that, yeah, it's Danath being a mopey old man, which is a fair enough thing, but for a lot of players, well, we've actually seen a lot of mopey old men in World of Warcraft. Basically, WoW's old characters evolved.
I liked Sourfang, man. Sourfang was cool. He was a cool guy. He was a war veteran. He lost his son. I don't know, I found him to be a very relatable character. I did, and I liked his pride in the Horde, and how he wanted to bring it back to glory, and he sacrificed himself in the end, and he understood Anduin wasn't a bad guy. Sourfang was cool.
Been hitting the cycle of violence drum, whilst the younger characters have been traipsing about as
honorable.
Perfect pictures of self-righteousness, which has just felt a little bit flat. Now that we've put that in the proper context, we can now investigate the story that's being told. All this brings us to the new story coming in patch 11.17. It's a new campaign, and it escalates over the course of a questline that's around an hour long. So we land in the Arathi Highlands, and we're immediately met with a bandit attack on a wagon. Now this is a reference to Westfall's opening, except this time, good news, we stopped the murder. Now, the bandits are wearing a red mask. We've obviously seen those red masks before. It's the Defias. They're back at it again. And if you don't know the lore, the Defias are a group of bandits formed in response to Stormwind cheating the Stonemasons Guild out of their livelihoods after...
Look, the Defias are extreme, but can I just say they're not wrong? They're not wrong. They weren't paid. They freaking rebuilt the entire city, and then they were never paid. What the hell, man? Yeah, of course they're gonna be pissed, and they're out there in Westfall. Freaking, all their infrastructure's falling apart. They did all this shit to rebuild the city, and they never got money out of it. So now they're living on the fucking streets. Of course they're gonna riot.
For they helped rebuild Stormwind after the events.
Now, I mean, they also kind of murdered the king's wife, by accident. They freaking hit her with a rock in the head. And that kind of led to a downward spiral for them as well, where they were just being chased out at that point, and then they were fighting back. It got dirty. It got dirty, but they weren't wrong initially.
Of Warcraft 1, the RTS game from quite a while ago. They're basically a group who very much could have been working class heroes, but instead they ended up turning to violence.
Yeah, you know those statues in the front of Stormwind? These guys, man, these guys were stonemasons. They built those things.
Now, and of course after the human heritage questline resolved the root conflict, the Defias seem to more just be bandits. But as it turns out, there's more to it, because we also find the emblem of a new group who are called the Red Dawn. Yes, just like the movie, we've got commies raining into the sky in Azeroth.
Oh, jeez.
No, not really. They're a new group, and basically...
Stormwind AI took their jobs. That's fun. Yeah. The Defias Brotherhood is being depleted by AI.
They're trying to extort and bully farmers into joining their group. So basically, the Red Dawn are not good guys. We then head to Stromgarde to find out more about all of this, only to find that Marin still has supporters. She's, of course, the niece of Trollbane, who we saw in that audio drama. And we soon see her reporters are a bad bunch. They're being openly racist in the street, they're shouting about a future for humanity, they're trying to bully a dwarven blacksmith into leaving, all this stuff. So, we get deputized. We get our deputy badges. We go sort of copping about the place, running around telling loiterers to go home and, maintaining order.
Break it up, boys.
People in the city are low on resources. They're blaming whoever they can really find. Their leaders, the orcs, the bandits. That's quite natural stuff. This is a world that's seen nothing but war for decades. It's been a bit ridiculous. Now we go into a tavern, only to hear that they've got almost no food left. So, rightly enough, they're furious. To them, the Alliance won't help, and we won't really help either. We're just flashing our badges and taking what little they've got left. And to make it worse, every time someone has a problem, Faerun says something real pointless about how we're really trying to help them. Suffice to say, she's a little tone deaf. Now, ignoring the racism angle here, which you actually can see making, complete sense in a fantasy world, but per the lore of this region, I'm not necessarily sure if it actually fits. What is fairly clear here is that we are making the problem worse. That's what's happening in the story. We're basically the representatives of the Alliance coming in and saying that what they've already been given is not enough. And of course, by doing that, what are us and Faerun doing? We're pushing people into the hands of extremists. We're so focused on the big world-ending war that we're letting our allies...
I mean, look, there's some... it's very obvious what a lot of these Blizzard writers are doing right now. There's some coincidences, right? Some parallels with what's going on in real life. Now, the question is, do you want that in your game? I don't know. I feel about it. I was kind of hoping when we got the Arathi lore that we were just going to get some badass humans doing badass things, bringing some glory back to the human race, and showing off how strong they can be when they're united, because that's what the Altaric Empire was. It was the uniting of all the human kingdoms. Instead, it seems like we're getting a whirlwind of current day politics in WoW.
Suffer. And you know what? That's actually a great storyline. And you might think that's where this story is going.
Make Altaric Valley great again kind of thing. Yeah.
Shit. The idea that the Alliance have been grappling with all of these wars for such a long time that people at home are kind of suffering, and that's creating tensions. That perhaps makes us question our moral superiority when we're uncritically going around playing at cops while Faerun's dismissing concerns with platitudes. And I really wish they were trying to do a story like that, but Blizzard pumps the brakes immediately and they start to get the villain bat out. So we actually find out that the Alliance have indeed been sending caravans with supplies from Khazmo Dan. The problem is that bandits have been stopping them. So it's actually not the case that the Alliance has been faced with a resource issue and they've had to divert the resources to the war effort, thus leaving people in the lurch at home. No, the Alliance are, once again, not doing anything wrong because they're great. No, it's...
That's right. Recognize. All the Horde keep waiting for the Alliance to fuck up. Okay, we're not going to. Yeah, Arthas was from the Alliance, and all these other things have happened, and Illidan's technically an Alliance character too, but he's not wrong anymore. So we've had some mistakes, but guess what? Not now. Not now, okay?
All the fault of the Red Dawn, these new bandits. And that basically continues. Marin tries to convince Faerun to join their cause, but that doesn't work because she directly insults Faerun's elven blood to her face, which, isn't really smart. Refugee Point is then attacked with Scarlet Crusaders carrying Red Dawn emblems, slaughtering all non-humans.
And here's the thing, though. Faerun to them is a foreigner. Imagine you're a people, right? He just talked about how their caravans are being captured, right? Imagine you and your people are starving in the middle of this fucking, basically the ruins of a kingdom. And then all of a sudden this chick shows up out of nowhere. She clearly doesn't look like you guys. She doesn't talk like you guys. She's wearing armor that isn't from you guys. She's got different symbolism on and everything. She's not from this place. And she's fucking tone police. She's walking around telling everyone what to do. Telling everyone to be grateful for what they have. What the fuck? Of course this is going to go wrong. Of course these people are not going to be accepting of her. What the shit?
And at this point, it's really obvious what's happening here.
That's not racism. That's just humanism. They're just going to be pissed off at this foreign person showing up and telling them, hey, you should be happy with the bread you have.
Well, other characters really just don't seem to have any idea. It's a bit odd. The Red Dawn are essentially trying to get the Alliance and the Horde to fight again. They're stoking tensions. To that end, Hammerfall is attacked. Now, the orcs are kind enough to take in human refugees from the bandit attacks, but the humans kind of feel off. They're oddly ungrateful. They're making snide remarks about the orcish food, that kind of thing. And then, well, we find out that some of the Syndicate, another criminal group from the area, have also joined the Red Dawn, and as we find that out, suddenly we're attacked. It actually turns out those refugees are not refugees. They're Red Dawn in disguise.
Yeah.
Maybe that makes sense of why they're talking shit about orcish food. Anyway, we fend them off. We race back to Stromgarde only to find that the Red Dawn have ambushed a Strom patrol and they've tried to blame the orcs by leaving axes at the scene of the fight. It is, of course, a classic false flag. We go back to report the truth, but we're too late. Stromgarde is attacked by a full Red Dawn force, which obviously we clear out because we're the player and we're great. Now it ends with Faerun ready to deliver the killing blow to Marin, but Daneth Trollbane jumps in to stop her. He does not want Marin to be made a martyr, and he would rather that Arathi history, well, states that they were a merciful people. So that's the end of the conflict. The Red Dawn are sent running with their tails between their legs, completely defeated, and
My God, they are led by a Karen. Are you serious? She got the pointy glasses on and everything. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Completely defeated, and Faerun gets showered in praise by Daneth for upholding the true legend of Thoradane. And the sad thing is, with how it plays out, it does not feel earned at all. Actually, look what Faerun did. All she did was spout platitudes, be really tone deaf, and then win a fight. It ends with orcs and humans being friends again, and the bandit threat being lessened, meaning that resources should be plentiful for the locals. All is well enough by the end, but it does set things up for the future. The Red Dawn still exist, they fled up north, and that means they'll probably pop up in Quel'Thalas during midnight. That's it.
Makes sense.
And, well, you now know the story as I've told it to you. Experientially, it feels toothless. When I look at the people commenting based on playing in the PTR, they're also saying it's toothless. So, let's actually engage with that. We've done a lot of thinking, a lot of talking internally, and here's what we think the problem is. The Red Dawn could have been interesting villains. Marin could have been the second Garithos that a lot of people wanted in WoW. Not because they think Garithos is great and they want to emulate him, but...
Okay, but she is a Karen, but she's also kind of hot. I'm not going to lie. I'm getting in my feels a little bit for her. Yeah, Marin's not too bad looking, actually.
Because Garithos was...
That's kind of a thing, the gray hair, the glasses.
A real shitbag. That made him a good villain. And you know what? I personally liked her in Heartlands. She loses herself in recreating legend. But the thing is, this entire questline, including the propaganda that's revealed to be why people are joining, just ends up feeling rather baseless. Let me explain that, because it may not make sense without some lore background. So, the Kingdom of Strom was founded on a solid relationship with the elves, and that means this sudden uptick in human supremacy feels totally unnatural. Nothing in Thordane's history had anything to do with humans versus other races. Their big existential threat was the Troll Wars, which he allied with elves to solve. And for all of modern history, they've actually had a close relationship with the nearby dwarves. Now, the Defias were formed when Stormwind refused to pay them for their work, and that was a true injustice. That's why the Defias story resonated with people. Essentially, good people were punished for no real solid reason. It was a good example of Stormwind being out of touch. The Scarlet Crusade splinter groups joining the Red Dawn based on propaganda also does make sense. There's posters calling for a greater purpose than just killing the undead. It makes some sense.
Whatever happened to the Scarlet newsletters that were being scattered all over Stormwind saying that Anduin was a false king and there was a real king? They talk about. I don't know. I wonder if that comes back as the Light Emperor or that just goes away. Because remember, a lot of this lore was not written by Chris Metzen. He's back now. Early in this video, he kind of was blaming Chris Metzen for this. The War Within is not a Chris Metzen expansion. Basically, you got Midnight as the kickoff of what Chris Metzen has been writing. So we'll see how his writing kind of, whether or not it gets more war-y and all that shit. Because compared to this, where it's all about making friends and stuff.
Got nothing on the existential crisis that
I
made
wonder
the
if that's
Scarlet
going to come
Crusade
back, that
compelling
Anduin
villains
stuff.
in the first place. And that, of course, was the intense trauma of losing all of Lordaeron to a truly inhuman force, and what that brings out in people. So, you could imagine joining them and feeling right to. But the Red Dawn aren't really given that. They're not built up. Instead, it's one woman wanting to be a legendary hero and stoking up tensions to gather a loose ideological following. And basically, unlike with Warcraft's other great villains, you don't come out of this story thinking that the Red Dawn had much of a point. Blizzard tried to do that, but it just feels like they didn't fully commit. They tried to have teeth, but they weren't really willing to let those teeth connect with flesh. And where it's frustrating is how this could have been brilliant. I mean, they're a sad, angry group of people who were given a false enemy. That's fundamentally something that could be the start of brilliant storytelling. But to emphasize that, one of their leaders is Joseph the Enlightened. He's a literal crazy Scarlet who bubble hearths away every time you fight him with some sort of sniveling voice line.
Typical Paladin. Times get tough, what do? Bubble hearth. Yep. Makes
not
sense.
Only is he a
Paladins
joke,
would make
he's
horrible fathers. They're not going to go get, they're going to go get the milk and never come back. That's what's going to happen. They're going to, the kids are there, responsibilities and everything. What's going to happen? Bubble hearth. Yep.
Played for a joke. And that sucks. Blizzard are so afraid of making villains that you might agree with to the point where they're now just making them a parody.
I think he might be onto something there. Like, Garrosh did a lot of fucked up shit, right? I mean, full-blown public executions. We're talking about racism, all kinds of shit. And at the end, there were like people who said Garrosh did nothing wrong, and I don't know why. I guess Blizzard didn't like that. You even hear the stories of Arthas purging the entirety of the culling of Stratholme. The city must be purged, and people look at it and say, well, that was kind of logical, right? I mean, he didn't want the plague to spread to other places. It became a sacrifice of few to save the many, and he made that decision. And maybe Blizzard doesn't like people agreeing with kind of things that have moral like shakiness to them. So now they're trying to create, more of these, mustache twirling villains where it's just like very obvious they're a villain and there's nothing good about them, which is kind of sad because more nuanced villains are so much better. So much better. I mean, just look at any other, series or whatever. I mean, look at Thanos. People are like, oh yeah, wiping out half the world because everyone's going to die if you don't. Okay, fine. These kinds of things, I guess Blizzard doesn't want to delve into that anymore. They don't want villains that can be their morals can be kind of justified in a way.
Now just making them a parody.
Which is sad because it's better that way.
What works about the Scarlet Crusade is they had a point, but then they did wrong things. Same for the Defias, and so on and so forth. But in a world where Blizzard will undercut that by doing a bubble hearth joke, well, that's a world where we'll never get a Scarlet Crusade that feels like the Scarlet Crusade. Or
what about Iridikron? Well, Iridikron hasn't done anything too questionable yet. Like, Iridikron kind of avoided us the whole time. Like, yes, he's a villain, but he didn't do anything that you would be like, oh, shit, that's fucked up. He kind of just went about his way. He kind of let Farak do all the messed up shit. He just wanted to get his dark heart and be gone. Even when he fought us, he had this whole thing where he knew he was going to do the time reversal shit and everything, and he was going to get out of that fight. So, I mean, Iridikron hasn't done anything morally questionable yet. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe he did something to some dragon eggs. I have no idea. But nothing on the level of Garrosh or Arthas, where it was like, okay, clearly innocent people have lost their lives can you still agree with this guy when some of the player base says yes? I don't know. Blizzard didn't feel comfortable with that, I guess.
A new Defiance that feels as good as the Defiance did. And it's sad because Blizzard did try to do a good story here. I mean, if there's a point to it, it's to show that people who are in pain and anger can be misled and abused. But
Eridicron broke the timeline. Yes, he gave Xal'atath the Dark Heart. This is true, but he didn't go on some kind of murdering spree. Or, he's just trying to do what he thinks is right. He's trying to get vengeance on the Titans, which, is kind of, looking at everything we've learned about them, not the worst thing.
Doesn't have the courage to say they might have a point. It doesn't make anyone take responsibility for it. It essentially fails to commit. And of course, the Alliance and the Horde walk out of this story nice and shiny. Wholly blameless. The Alliance sent what they could, but the Red Dawn blocked it. The Mag'har did absolutely nothing wrong either. They trusted humans, got attacked, and said, "Ah well, no big deal," afterwards. No lingering tension, no damage dealt, just a big, happy, peaceful ending. Cue the closed captions that say, "Orchestral swell." And then there's the bit where Faerun says, after meeting the Horde, that actually she thinks more of trolls than she did when hearing her people's history. But shortly after that, you do kind of go and murder 15 Amani trolls to stop them from boiling captured humans alive and eating them. That's a little bit odd. Not exactly consistent in tone.
That's more cool, though. That's my kind of shit. That's what I want to do. Kill some trolls that are trying to boil humans alive. That's what I'm talking about. That's some faction tension right there going on.
Odd. Not exactly consistent.
Even though the Amani are not part of the Horde yet, I think they might become.
What's next then? Look, the good news is this isn't all bad stuff. The threat of the Red Dawn amassing in Quel'Thalas does have potential, especially if they're a group who hate elves. That does leave room for some fun stuff in the table in the Midnight expansion. Of course, the Amani still being unrepented evil gives us a villain beyond the void for that expansion. Hey, a troll patch, I guess. Blizzard could, even if they undercut it all the time, try to bring back these Horde and Alliance tensions. And big picture, developing characters in regions like this is not a bad thing. It's really nice that a patch in a new expansion will take us back to the old world.
Yeah, I do like that.
And with future potential, who knows? The Red Dawn might find allies in the true Arathi, or maybe the true Arathi just laugh at them for being silly round-ear supremacists, given that they are, of course, themselves half-elves. Plus, the actual pacing of the quests, the animations and the cutscenes, all that stuff, for the most part, the dialogue, it's actually all pretty good. It's Blizzard trying to say, there's a minor patch and it will have a slice of a campaign, a story for you to play. That's obviously cool. Something that Final Fantasy XIV uses to great effect, and I love to see them try to do that. And overall, there is a lot of love and care here. I mean, the Defias, the Scar...
I really don't like that he's talking shit about the wall. I don't like it. I feel like it's a remnant of the human empire. Without the uniting of the Arathi, most likely these... we would have lost out of the first wars. A lot of bad things would have happened. Yes, during the uniting, bad things happened to unite the human empire. But still, just to talk shit about the wall, what the hell?
Love and care here. I mean, the Defias,
just throwing
the
your
Scarlet,
history
the Syndicate, they're being tied together nicely. It does display a darkness that's inherent to Azeroth's troubles and her people, and there are some fun twists, some fun turns, lots of details. It's not all bad. It's just not exactly what we want, and it's pretty easy to poke some holes in it. So, as for the future then, even if it doesn't involve Xal'atath or the Void, I think this is directly setting the stage for Midnight. But when our major characters are completely incapable of making mistakes, it's hard to be excited for the story. It does just feel like we go on a quest with Blizzard's golden boys and girls, especially when it's following the same formula. A third party comes in and stokes some tension, usually in a comically evil way, and then we beat them off and hear a speech about how, I don't want to shock you, war is bad or something. WoW story has to be more than just names being mentioned and things being thematically tied together. The story has to actually make us feel something. And you see, the thing is, whenever faction tensions are stoked up and a player feels pride and actually feels like it's time for them to go and massacre the Horde or massacre the Alliance, and then the game sort of after that says, oh my god, you just massacred those people, that's pretty crazy. Well, do you know what that is? That's the player being
oh my god, people died in a war. That's
actually invested in the moment, and actually there being a bit of interactivity, emotional play with the player throughout the narrative, not just good lessons and things we like. And I think on that front, this largely does miss the mark. But the funny thing about today's Warcraft is, while they can still miss the mark, they also are actually starting to hit it more and more and more. And while I'd be tempted to give you some lore, there's loads of great lore on the channel, the next big thing you should watch is this on player housing, because it's being executed in a way that reminds me of the Blizzard entertainment that I fell in love with as a child.
Yeah, I don't really like that lore. I don't like the way they're laying it out. Yeah, the Sons of Lothar promote tolerance. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe they're trying to modernize WoW or old WoW lore, but I kind of wish they would just leave it alone. Let it be, just like you can't modernize modern day human history, right? There's nothing you could do to bring what was done in the past up to modern times. You can't just sit there and lie. Can't be like, oh yeah, America was founded on tolerance. Some fucked up shit happened when America was founded, but that doesn't mean all of America for eternity is shit. No, things happen in the past, and to kind of just wash it away, say this wall represents bullshit. I don't know. Anyways, to blame Chris Metzen, as I was saying earlier, isn't really fair. He didn't really write all this lore. Yes, he probably saw it and is letting it go through anyways. Maybe he did touch base on this lore specifically. But overall, the story of the war within and everything, it's not Chris Metzen's story yet. We gotta wait till midnight, then we'll see how things go. Overall, I still like Xal'atath as a villain, where things are going with her, Ridicron, all that. I think there's still good stories. Just a little bit more violence, maybe a little bit more war. That'd be cool. We'll see if we get that stuff. Anyways, that is all in terms of this video.